Welcome, everyone. I am so incredibly thrilled to have you here with us for another deep dive.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
We are jumping into something today that I genuinely believe could change the way you look at your entire life. Seriously. But before we get into the heavy stuff, I want to take you back to a story you probably haven't thought about since you were a little kid.
Oh, I think I know where you're going with this.
You know the classic Aesop's fable of the ant and the grasshopper?
Absolutely. It is the ultimate childhood cautionary tale. I mean, it's basically our culture's foundational myth about, the virtues of hard work versus the dangers of just playing around.
Exactly. For anyone who needs a quick refresher, the story goes that the industrious little ant works all summer long, just sweating in the absolute blazing heat.
Storing up food for the winter.
Right, storing up food. Meanwhile, the carefree grasshopper is just fiddling away, singing, playing, having a grand old time while the sun is out.
And in the winter hits.
Then the freezing cold winter rolls in. The ant is safe and warm and well-fed in his little underground bunker, and the poor grasshopper is out in the snow, starving and miserable.
It's a brutal ending for a kid's story, honestly.
It really is. And the moral we are all taught as kids is incredibly simple and ingrained in us. There is a time for work and there's a time for play. Don't be the grasshopper. Be the ant.
Put your head down, do the work, prepare for the future.
Right. But I want to flip that entirely on its head for you today. Here's the question that just completely blew my mind when I started looking into today's material. We all know what happens to the grasshopper. He starves. It's a tragedy.
But when does the ant get to play?
Exactly. When does the hardworking ant ever actually get to play? If the ant spends its entire short, finite life slaving away, hoarding resources for a winter that eventually ends in death anyway, when does it get to have any fun?
That is a phenomenal question, and it really gets to the absolute core of what we are unpacking today. What's fascinating here is that society constantly preaches the virtues of the ant.
Oh, constantly.
Yeah. We are told over and over to delay gratification, to save for a rainy day, to maximize our 401k contributions, to put off living until we reach some mythical finish line.
But we completely ignore the tragic irony of working your whole life to save money you will literally never get to spend.
Exactly. We are terrified of starving like the grasshopper, but we completely overlook the tragedy of dying as an overworked ant who never actually lived.
And that brings us to the actual material we are diving into. We've pulled together the core concepts, the data, and the overarching philosophy from the book Die with Zero by Bill Perkins.
Yeah, Perkins is a hugely successful energy trader.
Right. And he takes an incredibly radical, data-driven approach to personal finance and, more importantly, life optimization.
Radical is definitely the right word for it, because if you are listening to this hoping for standard personal finance advice...
Like how to squeeze an extra 2% yield out of your dividend stocks.
Right, or how to perfectly balance a bond portfolio, you are going to be completely thrown off. This isn't about that at all.
No, not even close. Our mission for this deep dive is to look at your life through an entirely different lens. We are not here to tell you how to make your money grow. We are here to figure out how to make your life grow.
I love that framing.
For you listening right now, the goal of this next hour is to solve what is essentially a massive optimization problem. How do you maximize your life fulfillment while minimizing the absolute worst, most tragic kind of waste?
Squandered life energy.
Yes. Squandered life energy.
That phrase is central to everything we're talking about today. To really grasp what Perkins is arguing, you have to actively change how you view a dollar bill. It requires a complete paradigm shift regarding what money actually is.
Okay, let's unpack this. Yeah. Because we tend to think of money as paper or digits on a screen, or maybe a measure of status or security.
Sure, that's the default.
But Perkins introduces a concept, which he actually credits to another famous personal finance book, Your Money or Your Life, that money is not just currency. Money is life energy.
Yes. Think about what you actually do when you go to work. You are trading a fraction of your finite time on this earth, time you can never, ever get back, for a paycheck.
You traded your literal life energy for that paper.
Exactly. So let's do some quick math to make this tangible. Let's say after you account for taxes, health insurance premiums, and the hidden costs of working.
Commuting and buying office clothes.
Right, all of that. Let's say your net Take-home pay comes out to $20 an hour.
Okay, $20 an hour. Pretty standard for a lot of folks.
So if you walk into a store and you see a gadget or a pair of shoes that costs $100, you are not just looking at a price tag. Buying that item literally costs you 5 hours of your life energy.
5 hours.
It costs you 5 hours of being alive, 5 hours you could have spent playing with your kids or reading a novel on a park bench or just sleeping in.
Wow.
You traded that chunk of your mortal life to your employer for the cash to buy those shoes. So when you make that purchase, you are exchanging a piece of your existence for it.
That hits so hard when you phrase it like that. Apply that to the classic latte factor that financial gurus are always harping on. Or buying a nice jacket.
Yeah, the $200 jacket.
If you are making $20 an hour net and you buy a $200 jacket, that is 10 hours of your life, more than the full exhausting day of work.
You have to ask yourself, and we really want you, the listener, to actively consider this next time you are standing at a checkout counter. Is this purchase actually worth the hours of my precious life that I permanently gave up to get it?
It completely reframes consumption. You stop buying thoughtless junk when you realize you are paying for it with your lifespan.
It really does, but, and here's where Perkins takes this to a totally different level, it also completely reframes saving.
Right.
If money is life energy, then hoarding money unnecessarily is hoarding unlived life.
Whoa! Hoarding money is hoarding unlived life. That is deep.
Right.
And it completely goes against the grain of everything we're taught. I mean, we are praised for saving.
Exactly. But Perkins has this hilarious and really eye-opening personal anecdote from his own life that illustrates why blind saving can actually be incredibly foolish.
Oh, the Wall Street story.
Yeah, back in the early 1990s, he was a 20-something guy fresh out of college, working his very first job on Wall Street.
But he wasn't making, like, Wolf of Wall Street money, right?
Not at all. His title was screen clerk, which he essentially describes as being the lowest assistant peon on the trading floor. He was making $18,000 a year.
That is rough, especially in New York.
He was living in Manhattan, sharing a tiny studio apartment where he and his roommate put up a makeshift wall just to give him a quasi-bedroom that he says was roughly the size of a pizza oven.
I think so many people listening can relate to that. The classic young, broke, paying your dues city living experience. Yeah. You were eating ramen, you were counting every single penny.
He was incredibly cheap. He had so little disposable income that if he managed to go on a date to the movies, he would be sweating bullets, hoping his date didn't order popcorn because it would completely blow his budget for the week.
Oh my gosh, the stress of the popcorn.
He even had a friend who would save unpopped popcorn kernels from the bottom of the bowl and put them in the fridge to try and pop them later. That is the level of broke we are talking about.
Okay, so he's living on absolutely nothing.
Right. But despite all of that, Perkins was actually really proud of himself because even on an $18,000 salary, living in one of the most expensive cities in the world, he managed to scrimp, sacrifice, and save $1,000 in his bank account.
Which, under the traditional Ant philosophy we just talked about, is amazing. He is delaying gratification. He is building a safety net. He is doing exactly what every financial advisor tells a 22-year-old to do.
So he thinks. He goes to his boss, a partner at the firm named Joe Farrell, and he tells him about this $1,000 he managed to save, fully expecting a massive pat on the back for his excellent financial discipline.
And what does Joe say?
Joe Farrell looks at him, completely deadpan, and asks, "Are you an idiot?" Well, he used a slightly stronger word.
I absolutely love that response. It's so jarring. But why? Why is his boss calling him an idiot for saving money?
Because his boss understood the trajectory of a career. Joe Farrell tells him, "You came to Wall Street to make millions. Your earning power is going to skyrocket. Do you honestly think you'll only be making 18 grand a year for the rest of your life?"
And right there, his boss was introducing him to an economic concept called consumption smoothing.
Exactly.
Okay, let's dig into this because this concept completely broke my brain when I first read about it. What exactly is consumption smoothing?
Consumption smoothing is the idea that your income is going to vary wildly throughout your life. When you are 22, you usually have very little income. As you gain skills and promotions, your income steadily rises.
Right, you get raises, you climb the ladder.
During your peak earning years, usually your late 40s and 50s, your income is at its absolute highest. Then in retirement, it drops down again. But just because your income fluctuates like a crazy roller coaster over the decades doesn't mean your spending or your quality of life should fluctuate that wildly.
Right, because you don't want to live in abject, miserable poverty at 22 and then suddenly live like royalty at 50 and then go back to eating cat food at 80.
Exactly. You want to smooth out your consumption. You want a relatively consistent, enjoyable standard of living across your entire life. To do that, rational economic theory says you should transfer money from your years of abundance to your leaner years.
So applying that to young Bill Perkins, saving heavily when he was young and broke, was actually mathematically and logically backwards.
Precisely. Why would a starving 20-something kid living in a pizza oven apartment sacrifice his basic, everyday quality of life, stressing over movie theater popcorn, just to save a measly $1,000 to give to his 50-year-old self?
Who is likely going to be a multimillionaire?
Right. To the 50-year-old Perkins, $1,000 is literal pocket change. It's a rounding error. He was actively starving his poorest, youngest self to feed his wealthiest, oldest self. It is a completely inefficient allocation of his life resources.
That is such a mind-bending way to look at it. We're always told to save early. Compound interest, right. That's the gospel.
It is the gospel, but it ignores context.
Yeah, if your trajectory is drastically upward, if you are a med student or an entry-level associate or just someone starting a business that you know will grow, you are just punishing your poorest self. You are making your hardest years even harder for no rational reason.
It's true. Now, obviously, this requires an honest assessment of your earning potential. But the broader point is that we obsess over the future at the extreme expense of the present. And we do this because we assume we have an infinite amount of time to eventually reach those wealthier years and enjoy the money.
We assume the winter is far away.
We assume we'll even make it to winter.
Which is the biggest, most dangerous assumption of all. And the author grounds this theory in a reality check that is incredibly heartbreaking, but so important for this whole philosophy. It's the story of Aaron and John.
Yes, this is where the theoretical economics hit the harsh reality of human biology.
Let me set the stage for you. John was just 35 years old. He and his wife, Erin, were successful, hard-working lawyers. They had 3 young kids.
Doing everything right.
Building their careers, paying their mortgages, being good little ants. Then John goes to the doctor for what he thinks is a minor issue, and he gets diagnosed with clear cell sarcoma.
A rare, extremely aggressive type of cancer.
The tumor was already the size of a baseball before they even knew it was there. Because they were young and healthy, nobody suspected cancer until it was way, way too late.
It's every family's absolute worst nightmare.
He was diagnosed in October. He was dead by January, 3 months. That's all they had.
And when faced with that brutal, undeniable reality, Erin did exactly what any of us would do if we knew time was that short. She stopped working.
Immediately.
She quit her high-paying job immediately to spend every possible second with John and their kids. They went to parks, they watched movies on the couch, they went on historic walking tours in Boston in the brief windows between his clinical trials.
She didn't care about her 401k. She didn't care about her billable hours.
Because when the end is staring you in the face, the money becomes utterly meaningless compared to the time.
What really struck me about this story is that while this is an extreme, tragic case, it highlights a universal truth. Death wakes people up. When the end is near, people suddenly snap out of autopilot. They stop being the ant.
They start asking, what the hell am I doing?
Right. Why did I wait this long to just sit in the park with my family? But my question for you, connecting this to Perkins's philosophy, is why do we wait? Why does it take a terminal diagnosis for us to realize we are living as if our time is infinite?
It comes down to a psychological defense mechanism. The human brain is actually wired to be highly irrational about death. We don't like thinking about it. We avoid the subject entirely.
It's morbid.
It is, and we treat our expiration date as this vague, mysterious event in the distant future that we just shouldn't think about in polite company. And because we refuse to look at the finish line, we operate on the default setting of our culture, which is to work, save, and defer living until some mythical future date called retirement.
We just assume we will get there.
Exactly. The story of Aaron and John forces us to confront the uncomfortable fact that the future is absolutely not guaranteed. The resources you are saving for your golden years might be utterly useless to you if you don't make it there, or if you make it there but your health is entirely gone.
So I want to pause for a second and ask you, the listener, directly. Think about your life right now. Are you putting off things you genuinely want to do? Are you saving money for experiences you might never be healthy enough to enjoy?
It's a tough question to answer, honestly.
Are you working long, stressful hours right now? Sacrificing time with your family or your friends to ensure a comfortable future that isn't actually promised to you? It is an incredibly heavy question, but it is the bedrock of figuring out how to optimize your life.
And if we use that realization as a pivot, it moves us directly from the philosophy of what money is into what we should actually be doing with it. This is the economics of memories.
Yes, the memory economics.
Because if money is life energy and time is finite, what are you supposed to be converting that energy into?
Right. You don't just take all your savings and blow it on expensive cars or random luxury watches. That's not what he's advocating. Perkins introduces this as rule number 2 in his framework. Start investing in experiences early.
Notice the language there. The word investing is used very deliberately. He isn't saying spend on experiences. He is saying invest.
It's a huge distinction. And the author has another great story from his 20s to illustrate this. Remember his roommate from back in his screen clerk days?
The guy living in the other half of the pizza oven apartment.
Yes, his name was Jason Rufo.
Yeah.
They are both making 18 grand a year. Jason decides he wants to take 3 months off to go backpack across Europe. But as we established, he is totally broke. So what does Jason do? He borrows $10,000 from a literal loan shark.
Okay, let's just pause there. A loan shark. No collateral, insane interest rates, and presumably the very real threat of broken legs if he doesn't pay it back.
Right. As I was reading this, I was practically yelling at the book. I mean, borrowing 10 grand from a loan shark to go on vacation is objectively terrible financial advice. It's the kind of thing that ruins people's lives.
Perkins's reaction at the time was exactly the same.
He told Jason, "You are crazy. You'll get your legs broken. You're going to completely stall your career just as it's starting." Perkins absolutely refused to go. He stayed in New York, being the good aunt, working and saving his pennies. But Jason actually went to Europe.
And what was the outcome of taking that massive, seemingly irresponsible risk?
Jason had the absolute experience of a lifetime. This is the early 1990s, well before smartphones and Google Maps and TripAdvisor. He saw the haunting horrors of Dachau in Germany. He learned firsthand about life under communist rule in the Czech Republic.
Eating fresh baguettes in Paris.
Falling in love, hopping ferries across the Greek islands. He came back infinitely richer in worldly experiences. And here's the kicker. His earning power wasn't permanently damaged at all.
He just went back to work.
He came back, got back to work, paid off the scary loan, and ended up making a fine living. But he gained something truly priceless.
And let me guess, Perkins completely missed out.
Yep. By the time Perkins finally felt financially secure enough to go to Europe, he was 30 years old. And he openly admits that by 30, he was already too bougie to sleep in grimy youth hostels with 18-year-olds.
He couldn't physically carry a 60-pound backpack around all day without his back hurting.
He had way more responsibilities at work, so taking 3 months off was completely impossible. He had to do a rushed, sanitized, 2-week luxury version of Europe. He totally missed the window to have that specific, raw, transformative, youthful adventure.
Jason bought a peak experience at the exact right biological and psychological time in his life, even if he had to finance it in a crazy way. Jason says today he wouldn't trade those memories for any amount of money in the world.
Now, obviously, we are not sitting here advising listeners to go find a loan shark.
Please do not do that.
Seriously, don't.
But the underlying principle Jason tapped into introduces a concept from the book that I find absolutely brilliant: the memory dividend.
Oh, I love this concept so much. Please explain this, because it changes everything about how you view spending money on a trip or an event.
We usually think of dividends purely in financial terms. You buy a stock and it pays you a cash dividend every quarter. It produces ongoing value. But Perkins argues that experiences pay an emotional dividend.
Okay, an emotional dividend.
Think about it this way. When you buy an experience, let's say you take that week-long vacation to Italy, you get the immediate visceral joy of the trip itself. The pasta, the wine, the sights. But the value of that purchase doesn't drop to zero the second your flight lands back home.
Right. It's not like buying a hamburger where once you eat it, it's gone forever.
Exactly. Every time you look at a photo from that trip, every time you tell a funny story at a dinner party about getting lost in the winding streets of Rome, every time you and your spouse reminisce and laugh about that one terrible waiter you had, you are earning a dividend from that original experience.
You are experiencing a fraction of that original joy all over again.
It is quite literally compounding interest, but for your soul.
That's a beautiful way to phrase it.
And just like financial compounding, memory dividends compound over time. Over a 50-year lifetime, the total joy you get from the memories of the trip, from sharing those stories with your children and grandchildren, can actually far exceed the joy you felt during the trip itself.
You are building a portfolio of memories.
Because when you are 85 years old and your mobility is gone and you are too frail to travel, what do you actually have left? You have the mental scrapbook of a life well lived. If you don't invest in those experiences early, your scrapbook is empty. You have no dividends to live off of in your later years.
That is so profound. And it's actually wild when you realize that massive tech companies have already figured out the economics of this, even if we haven't. Think about Facebook or Apple Photos or Google Photos.
Yeah.
What is one of their most popular features?
The on this day or memories pop-ups.
Yes. You'll just be sitting on the train, commuting to work, and your phone buzzes. It shows you a photo from a beach trip you took with your best friends 5 years ago. You instantly smile. You feel a rush of dopamine.
You text the photo to your friends,
saying, remember this. Those tech companies are literally monetizing our memory dividends to keep us engaged with their platforms. They know exactly how immensely valuable and emotionally potent those memories are to us.
Which is precisely why starting early is so absolutely critical to this equation. If you take that transformative trip to Europe at age 25, you have 60 years of your life left to collect memory dividends. You have 60 years to tell the stories.
But if you wait until you are 75 to finally take that trip, you only have 5 or 10 years to collect dividends.
You get a massively higher return on your investment if you buy the experience early in life.
And speaking of return on investment, that brings up this great story about a guy named Paulie. Paulie is a friend of the author, a guy in his 50s who was totally stressing out over buying a vacation property in Central America.
Classic Paulie.
Paulie was doing exactly what every financially responsible adult is trained to do. He was endlessly running the numbers. He was analyzing mortgage interest rates, looking into foreign tax breaks, and agonizing over whether he was going to get a standard 3% financial return on the real estate.
He was evaluating the house purely as a cash-flowing asset. He was looking for a return on equity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Perkins basically shakes him and says, Paulie, forget the financial ROI. What is the return on experience? He asks Paulie, how often are you actually going to use this place? Are you going to take your kids there every summer? Are you going to create irreplaceable family moments on that beach?
And Paulie says, well, yeah, of course.
So Perkins says, then who cares if the financial return is 3% or 1% or 0? If you use it to bond with your kids at age 50 in a beautiful place while they still want to hang out with you, that is the greatest deal on earth.
It exposes a massive glaring flaw in how we are taught to view assets. We are conditioned to believe that assets are only things that produce cash. Stocks, bonds, rental properties.
But if the ultimate goal of human life is fulfillment and joy, then experiences are the most valuable assets you can possibly acquire.
Paulie was missing the forest for the trees. He was evaluating a life-enriching asset using the sterile metrics of a cash-producing asset.
So for you listening right now, think about this practically. What are the experiences you can invest in today? And I want to be clear, they don't have to be a multi-million-dollar vacation home in Central America, especially if you are young.
When you are in your 20s, you have no money, but you have an abundance of time and health.
You can invest in incredibly cheap experiences that yield massive dividends. Going on a cheap road trip, sleeping in a tent, going to free local concerts, staying up until 3 a.m. playing board games with your college roommates. Remember that early is right now. You retire on your memories, so you need to start building that portfolio immediately, whatever your budget is.
And this naturally transitions us to the much darker side of this philosophy. Because if building a rich portfolio of memories is the ultimate goal, we have to look at what happens when you prioritize building a massive portfolio of cash instead.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If you don't do this, what is the consequence? This brings us to the core tragedy the book tries to prevent, the tragedy of the unspent dime, or why aim for zero. We're going to look at the actual undeniable math of wasted life energy. And let me warn you, the math here is pretty brutal.
It is, without a doubt, the starkest, most sobering illustration in all of the author's work.
Let's look at a hypothetical case study based on real data. Meet Elizabeth. Elizabeth is 45 years old. She lives in Austin, Texas, and she makes $60,000 a year. After you take out state and federal taxes, she takes home roughly $48,911.
She is a dedicated employee, working hard, averaging 50-hour work weeks to get ahead.
Okay, so if we break that annual take-home pay down by her actual hours worked, her net hourly rate is $19.56. That is the exchange rate for 1 hour of Elizabeth's life energy.
Keep that exact number in mind, $19.56.
Now, Elizabeth is a very good aunt. She pays off her mortgage early. She saves diligently. She consistently puts money into her 401k and never touches it. She retires at age 65, exactly when society tells her to.
Because she saved so well and lived frugally, she has a net worth of $770,000 the day she retires.
She lives a comfortable, standard retirement, spending a little bit less than she did while she was working. Elizabeth lives a long, healthy life and eventually passes away at age 85. When she dies, after all her expenses, she leaves behind $130,000 in her bank accounts.
And this is where traditional society looks at Elizabeth's life and says, bravo, good for Elizabeth. She dies with a safety net. She never became a burden on anyone. She succeeded.
But if we look at it through Perkins' lens, let's do the brutal math on that success. She died with $130,000 utterly unspent. It just sat there as digits on a server. If you divide that leftover $130,000 by her life energy hourly rate of $19.56,
you realize she spent over 6,600 hours at her desk just to generate that leftover cash.
that is staggering when you hear the raw hours.
It gets worse. 6,646 hours translates to 2.5 full years of 50-hour work week.
2.5 entire years.
Elizabeth spent 2.5 entire years of her one single precious life sitting in an office, stressing over projects, commuting in traffic, dealing with office politics for absolutely nothing. She threw away 2.5 years of her life energy. She literally worked for free.
When you frame it that way, leaving a pile of money behind isn't a badge of honor. It is a tragic miscalculation.
Oh.
Think of the opportunity cost. She could have retired at 62 and a half instead of 65.
She could have spent those 2.5 years traveling the world or volunteering at an animal shelter or just relaxing on her back porch reading books.
Instead, she sat at a desk to earn digits on a screen that she never, ever touched.
It is a profound, tragic waste. And the craziest part is that it happens at literally every income level. It's not just everyday middle-class workers like Elizabeth who fall into this trap.
The book brings up the story of John Arnold, who was a legendary, incredibly successful natural gas trader. John was brilliant, but even he recognized the danger of the autopilot trap early on. He told a colleague once, "Listen, once I make $15 million, if I'm still sitting at this trading desk, punch me in the face."
He knew that $15 million was more than enough to fund an incredible life, and any time spent working past that was just greed and wasted time. But let me guess, nobody punched him.
Nobody punched him. He hit 15 million and he just kept going. He hit 25 million, he hit 100 million. He didn't stop trading until he was 38 years old, and by then he had amassed a net worth of $4 billion.
$4 billion. This raises a deeply important psychological question about earning. Why do we keep going past the point of utility? In John Arnold's case, it is an extreme version of what the author calls the Brewster's Millions problem.
He literally made so much money that he physically couldn't spend it fast enough without completely destroying his kids' work ethic or doing insane things. But why did he keep sitting at a high-stress trading desk when he already had hundreds of millions of dollars?
Because it's an addiction.
Exactly. Making money becomes a habit. For high achievers, money ceases to be a tool to buy life experiences and becomes the ultimate scorecard. The habit of earning completely replaces the actual living of life. You go to work because going to work is all you know how to do.
Right. And John Arnold, to his credit, admits today that he will never get his 30s back. He traded irreplaceable years of his youth, his physical prime, to go from 100 million to 4 billion, a financial difference that has absolutely zero impact on his actual daily lifestyle.
You can only sleep in one bed and eat so many steaks.
But whether you are hoarding $130,000 like Elizabeth or hoarding billions like John, the core problem is identical. You are trading time for resources you will never use.
But why do normal people do this? A lot of it comes down to a fundamental misunderstanding of retirement, the myth of the golden years, and what economists call precautionary saving.
Yes, we are sold this dream by financial planners of a constant, steady, flatline retirement. We assume we will spend the exact same amount of money going out to eat and traveling at age 85 that we do at age 65. We think we need this massive, continuously growing nest egg.
But the actual economic data shows that is simply not true.
The Federal Reserve data on this completely blew my mind.
If people are supposedly saving their whole lives to finally spend money in retirement, you would expect their net worth to peak right at age 65 and then steadily go down as they draw from it to live, right? That's the logical assumption.
But the Fed data shows that the median net worth for American households actually keeps rising well into people's 70s. People aren't spending down their money. They are actively hoarding it even while they're supposed to be enjoying it.
And the reason for this isn't just psychological. It is intensely physical. Financial planners often divide retirement into 3 distinct phases to explain this drop in spending: the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years.
I really love those terms. Can you break those down?
Sure. In your go-go years, which is usually your 60s, you are newly retired, you finally have free time, you have your savings, and crucially, you still have your health. You are taking international flights, you are playing 18 holes of golf, you are hiking, you are actively spending money.
Then, inevitably, come the slow-go years in your 70s. Your health starts to naturally decline. You don't really want to deal with the hassle of a 14-hour flight to Tokyo anymore. You'd rather take a domestic road trip or just stay closer to home. Your spending naturally, organically drops.
Finally, you hit the no-go years. You are in your late 80s or 90s, your mobility is severely limited. You aren't traveling, you aren't going to fancy steakhouses because your digestion can't handle it. Your utility for money has absolutely plummeted. You literally cannot spend the money you saved for experiences because your body lacks the physical capacity to do so.
Perkins shares a story about his own grandmother that perfectly and kind of tragically illustrates the no-go years. He was a successful young trader, making really good money, and he wanted to share the wealth with his family. So he writes his grandma a check for $10,000. He figures she will go on a luxury cruise, or buy a beautiful piece of jewelry, or do something amazing for herself.
But she doesn't.
She doesn't. She was in her late 70s at the time. She had no go left in her. She was the kind of woman who kept thick plastic slipcovers on all her nice couches to protect them, literally sacrificing her own daily comfort to preserve furniture she rarely even sat on.
And what does she do with the 10 grand?
Christmas rolls around and she buys Bill a nice $50 sweater. The rest of the money just sat in her checking account untouched. She was physically and psychologically incapable of converting that money into an enjoyable experience because the biological window for that had permanently closed.
It perfectly demonstrates that the utility of money, its actual usefulness to generate joy, declines dramatically with age. $10,000 to a 25-year-old is world-altering. It can fund a business or a year of travel. $10,000 to an 85-year-old is just numbers on a monthly bank statement.
Now, I know exactly what everyone listening is screaming at their speakers right now. We have to address the elephant in the room. But what about healthcare? I have to save $1 million and never touch it because what if I get sick in my 80s? Nursing homes are expensive.
That is the ultimate fear driving all of this behavior. Precautionary saving for catastrophic end-of-life medical care.
It is a completely valid fear. But the math and the logic that people apply to solving that fear are often completely flawed.
The book uses the absolute best analogy for this: alien robot invasion insurance. Let's say there's a tiny fractional 0.001% chance that alien robots are going to invade the Earth next year. Should you spend your entire life savings, skip every family vacation, and toil in misery to build a multi-million-dollar underground bunker just in case?
No, because you would completely ruin your actual guaranteed life preparing for a wildly unlikely worst-case scenario.
End-of-life care is, mathematically, kind of similar. We all know end-of-life medical care in America is astronomically, absurdly expensive. We're talking upwards of $50,000 a night for a complex ICU stay.
And here is the brutal illusion of the safety net. If an ICU bed costs $50,000 a night, saving an extra $100,000 over your lifetime, sacrificing years of your youth, skipping vacations, working weekends to stockpile that cash, won't actually save you. It literally just buys you 2 extra days on a ventilator.
2 miserable days on a machine. Is that really worth sacrificing your family vacations in your 40s to buy 48 hours in a hospital bed when you are 88? Absolutely not.
So the expert advice here to solve this fear is twofold. First, do not try to save out-of-pocket cash to self-insure against catastrophic health events. It's inefficient. Instead, Buy long-term care insurance. Use the insurance market to pool the risk.
And second, and I think much more importantly, shift your healthcare spending to the front end of your life.
Exactly. Don't hoard money for a hospital bed at 85. Spend that money aggressively at 45 on preventative health. Buy higher quality food, hire a personal trainer to fix your back, get advanced out-of-pocket medical screenings that your standard insurance won't cover. Invest in maintaining your health span now rather than saving cash to merely prolong your death later.
That is such a powerful shift in mindset.
Yeah.
But okay, let's say we agree with the premise. We are sold, we want to die with zero, we want to maximize our life energy and invest in our memory dividends. How do we actually execute this without accidentally hitting zero when we are 75 and ending up living under a bridge? Because that fear of running out of money is very real. Does the book offer practical tools to navigate that?
Yes, and this is where the lofty philosophy meets the hard pavement of financial planning. To do this, you have to confront the ultimate unknown, your actual death date.
Right. So I am asking you, the listener, right now, do you actually know your life expectancy? Have you ever looked it up? Most people actively, aggressively avoid thinking about this. It feels morbid. It feels like bad luck.
But Perkins argues that if you don't confront your death date, you are flying a plane completely blind. If you don't have an estimated end date, your default setting will be driven by fear. You will save as if you're going to live to be 150 years old. And as we just established with Elizabeth, that guarantees a massive, tragic waste of your life energy. You have to use life expectancy calculators.
The book recommends the Actuary's Longevity Illustrator or the Living to 100 calculator online. They are free. You plug in your age, your weight, your family history, your drinking habits, whether you wear a seatbelt, and it runs the actuarial tables and gives you a statistical probability of exactly how long you will live. Let's say the calculator tells you 85. Now you finally have a target.
And to make that target feel viscerally real, the author uses an app on his phone called The Final Countdown.
Oh my gosh, I downloaded this after reading the book, and it is so intense. The Final Countdown app literally counts down the remaining weeks, days, and hours you have left to live based on that estimated death date you plug in.
I know a lot of people find that utterly horrifying.
It is a little horrifying. You open your phone to check Instagram, and there's a widget telling you that you only have 1,200 weekends left on Earth. But the author argues, and I actually agree now, that it provides a massive, necessary injection of urgency. When you see that number ticking down, you stop wasting your weekends. You stop mindlessly scrolling. You stop living on autopilot.
You realize that your time is strictly finite, and you need to deliberately, aggressively steer your life toward what brings you joy.
But calculating your life expectancy doesn't entirely eliminate what economists call longevity risk. Longevity risk is the fear of outliving your money. What if the calculator says you'll die at 85, so you plan to hit zero at 85, but then medical science advances and you live to 95?
The ultimate fear. What if I hit zero before I die? This is where we need to look at actual financial instruments, specifically income annuities. The overarching rule Perkins puts forward here is simple. You are not a good insurance agent.
Okay, wait. I need you to unpack that. Why am I a bad insurance agent?
Because an insurance company covers millions of people. If you try to self-insure against the risk of living to 110, you have to save an enormous multi-million-dollar pile of cash that you will almost certainly never use, just to cover a tiny statistical tail risk. You are hoarding cash for an event that probably won't happen. An insurance company, however, pools the risk of millions of people. Some people die at 70, some die at 100. The statistical errors cancel each other out.
So an income annuity is the absolute antidote to longevity risk. The way it works is you give an insurance company a lump sum of money. Say you hand over $500,000 when you were 60 years old. You hand it over and boom, it's gone from your bank account. But in exchange, the insurance company signs a contract guaranteeing you a set monthly payout for the rest of your life, even if you miraculously live to be 120.
Yes. Now I know what you're thinking.
I'm thinking that sounds terrifying. Handing over $500,000 to an insurance company. If I get hit by a bus the next week, the insurance company just keeps my $500,000. That feels like a scam.
And that is exactly why people resist them. But it is critical to understand that an annuity is not an investment. Financial advisors often hate annuities and talk their clients out of them because they compare them to stock market returns. And frankly, advisors want to keep your assets under management so they can charge you a fee.
But annuities are insurance.
You don't buy car insurance hoping for a high return on investment. You buy it so you don't go totally bankrupt in a crash. You buy an annuity so you don't go bankrupt if you happen to live to 100. It is a floor of safety.
The takeaway for you listening is this. The next time you sit down with your financial advisor, tell them your goal is not to maximize your wealth. Watch their head spin. Tell them your goal is to maximize total life enjoyment. Those are two vastly, fundamentally different goals. If your goal is life enjoyment, products like annuities free you up to aggressively spend down your remaining cash on trips and family, because your baseline survival, your rent, your groceries, is guaranteed until the day you die, no matter what.
It gives you the psychological permission you desperately need to actually spend your money on experiences without the looming dread of the future.
Okay, but we have to address the biggest, loudest, most emotional objection to this entire philosophy. I guarantee half the people listening are screaming this at their speakers right now. Isn't dying with zero incredibly selfish? What about my kids? What about leaving an inheritance?
It is the classic accusation. We view leaving a massive inheritance as the ultimate act of parental love and sacrifice.
Perkins hits this head on, and his take is controversial but mathematically undeniable. He argues that waiting until you die to give your kids money is actually the exact opposite of caring. If you wait until you die, you are subjecting your children's financial well-being to what he calls the 3 R's.
Giving random amounts of money at a random time to random people.
Exactly. Break that down. You don't know when you will die, so the timing of the inheritance is completely random. You don't know how much will be left after potential medical bills or market crashes, so the amount is random. And grimly, you don't even know if your kids will outlive you, so the people receiving it are random. How is leaving your children's financial well-being up to a massive, chaotic game of chance considered caring?
It isn't. Caring is being deliberate.
Yeah.
If you want to give your kids $100,000 to help them out, figure out how to give them $100,000. Don't just cross your fingers and hope there happens to be exactly $100,000 left over in your checking account when you randomly drop dead at age 87.
Let's talk about the timing of inheritances, because the data here is shocking and completely exposes the flaw in our system. When do people actually receive inheritances in America?
According to Federal Reserve data, the most common age for a person to receive an inheritance is 60 years old. 60. Think about that logically for a second. You're 60 years old. Your own kids are likely grown and out of the house. Your mortgage is probably paid off. Your career is basically winding down. You get a check for $200,000 from your deceased parents. What does it actually do for you? It just pads your retirement account. It sits there.
Compare that to the peak utility of receiving money. Data suggests, and widespread polling confirms, that the absolute peak utility for receiving a financial windfall is between the ages of 26 and 35.
Yes. When you are 30, you are trying to scrape together a down payment for your first house. You are having babies and paying exorbitant daycare costs. You are drowning in student loans. That is when you are stressed, drowning, and desperately need a lifeline.
Perkins shares the story of a woman named Virginia Collin to illustrate this. She raised 4 kids, largely as a single mother. She was constantly living on the edge of poverty. It was a massive daily struggle to keep the lights on and feed her kids. Finally, when she was 49 years old, her mother passed away and left her $130,000. And what did Virginia say about receiving that money? She said it was a nice bonus, sure, but it would have been totally, fundamentally life-changing 15 or 20 years earlier. When she was on the edge of poverty, struggling to buy groceries for her toddlers, her parents were sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars, hoarding it out of fear of a what-if medical emergency. They watched their own daughter struggle immensely so they could hold on to a financial safety blanket that they never even ended up using.
If you truly love your kids, give them their money when it matters, not when you die. Help them buy the house when they are 30. Help them pay for the daycare so they aren't so stressed. Give them the money at their point of peak utility.
So what does this all mean? If your legacy isn't a giant pile of cash dumped on a 60-year-old, what actually is it? The book points out that your true legacy is memories. It is time spent together. We all know the classic Harry Chapin song, Cats in the Cradle. The dad is too busy working to play catch with his son, and then the son grows up and is too busy with his own job to see his elderly dad.
It perfectly encapsulates the tragedy of trading time for money under the guise of providing for your family. If you are working overtime, stressing yourself out, missing school plays and family dinners just to leave a bigger financial inheritance for your kids, you are actually depleting their true inheritance. Because their true inheritance is time with you. You are actively stealing from their memory dividend to give them cash they won't even get until they are 60.
Wow. Stealing from their memory dividend. That is an incredibly powerful way to put it. And it's worth noting that this exact same logic applies to philanthropy and charity.
Yes, the timing of our charitable giving is often just as inefficient and flawed as our inheritances.
Perkins compares two wildly different philanthropists to prove this. First is Sylvia Bloom. She was a legal secretary in Brooklyn. She lived in a rent-controlled apartment. She took the subway every day. She lived incredibly frugally for 96 years. When she died, everyone was absolutely shocked to find out she had secretly amassed $8.2 million by quietly mirroring her boss's stock trades. And she left almost all of it to social service organizations and college scholarships.
And society rightfully praised her. The news articles lauded her as the absolute epitome of selflessness and quiet grace.
But the author challenges that narrative. Was it selfless, or was it a terrible inefficiency? Think of how much good that $8.2 million could have done if she had given it to those charities 30 or 40 years earlier. How many kids could have gone to college in the 1980s? How many hungry people could have been fed? The charity didn't need the money when she died. They needed it decades ago when the problems were happening.
Compare Sylvia Bloom to Chuck Feeney. Chuck Feeney is a billionaire who co-founded the Duty-Free Shoppers Group. He actively decided to practice a philosophy called giving while living. He intentionally, aggressively gave away $8 billion while he was alive. He got to actually see his money, build universities, fund critical medical research, and change the world in real time. He kept just $2 million for himself and his wife to live out their days in a modest rented apartment.
Charity cannot wait. The suffering is happening right now. The medical research needs funding right now. Give while you are living. Okay, as we head into our final theme, let's pull all of this lofty philosophy together into actionable, practical advice for your daily life. Because knowing this is one thing, but living it is another. We're going to look at a framework called the Golden Triangle.
This is the operational framework for how to actively balance your life's resources.
We hear a lot about static financial rules, like Elizabeth Warren's famous 50-30-20 budget rule. Spend 50% on needs, 30% on wants, save 20%. It sounds great. It's easy to remember. But why does Perkins completely reject static rules like that?
Because your life is absolutely not static. Why on earth should you save 20% of your income when you were 22 and totally broke, and also save 20% when you are 52 and at your peak earning power? The balance of your life constantly, radically shifts.
Right. So the Golden Triangle consists of three primary resources that dictate your ability to enjoy life: health, wealth, and free time. And the cruel joke of the universe is that you almost never have all three at the same time.
Exactly. In your 20s, you usually have abundant health and abundant free time, but zero money. In your 60s and 70s, you have abundant free time and abundant money from your savings, but your health is steadily declining.
And then there's the middle. In your 30s, 40s, and 50s, what should mathematically be the real golden years, where you have both the physical ability and the financial means to do anything? You have money and you still have health, but you have zero time. You are completely squeezed by the demands of your career and raising kids. You are time poor and cash rich.
So the goal of life optimization is to constantly recognize which phase you are in and actively use the resources you have in abundance to buy the resources you lack.
Well, let's talk about health for a minute, because health is the ultimate multiplier of the Golden Triangle. Without health, your wealth and your time are almost useless. Perkins has this great story about a trip to the Soggy Dollar Bar in the British Virgin Islands.
It's a fantastic, very relatable illustration of how our health limits creep up on us.
So, the author is there on a boat with his girlfriend's grandfather, a guy named Chris. Chris is 69 years old, and he's a former swim coach. He's always been athletic. To get to this specific bar, you have to anchor your boat offshore and physically swim about 30 yards to the beach. Chris dives right in. But halfway there, he starts yelling. He is gasping for air, panicking, swallowing water. He literally almost has a heart attack on a simple 30-yard swim. They manage to drag him to the shallow water, and he has to sit on the beach for 15 minutes just recovering his breath, totally shaken.
The takeaway there is that we constantly stubbornly fool ourselves into thinking we are in the exact same physical shape we were 20 years ago. Chris still saw himself in his mind's eye as the young, fit swim coach. He completely ignored the reality of his encroaching physical limits.
Oh man, I relate to that so much. It's like when you were at a family picnic and someone suggests a game of touch football and you take off sprinting like you did in high school and suddenly your hamstring just violently snaps. You realize your brain is rating checks your body can no longer cash.
We all do it. But poor health doesn't just happen overnight, it compounds. If you are 10 pounds overweight in your 40s, that puts 40 extra pounds of force on your knees with every single step you take. That slowly destroys the cartilage over time. Because your knees hurt in your 50s, you move less. Because you move less, you gain more weight. Because you gain more weight, your cardiovascular health drops. It is a negative compounding effect that destroys your capacity for joy.
Which is exactly why your health dictates the utility of your money.
Yeah.
It literally does not matter if you saved a $50,000 luxury vacation budget for retirement if your knees are so shot that you can't walk through the airport terminal or you can't hike the trail when you get to the destination. Every single dollar you spend on health in your 30s and 40s pays massive dividends in your ability to actually enjoy your wealth in your 60s.
Perkins is so obsessed with this concept of health as a multiplier that he regularly makes crazy prop bets with his friends just to force them to get healthy.
Yes. The Staples brothers bet. He bet two professional poker-playing brothers, Jamie and Matt Staples, 50-to-1 odds that they couldn't reach the exact same body weight in 1 year. At the time of the bet, Jamie was severely obese, weighing over 300 pounds, and his brother Matt was very skinny and underweight.
A seemingly impossible task, but they did it.
They did it.
Why?
Jamie lost over 100 pounds through extreme diet and exercise, and Matt practically lived in the gym and gained 50 pounds of muscle. They met in the middle. They won a ton of money from Perkins, but Perkins didn't care about losing the cash. He knew that, more importantly, they bought back their health span. Yeah. Investing time and money into your health pays out for every single subsequent experience in your life.
So if we connect this directly to you, the listener, take a hard look at the golden triangle in your own life right now. Which resource are you lacking? If you are in your 40s with a good income but absolutely no free time, stop hoarding your money. Use your abundant money to buy time. Hire a house cleaner so you have your weekends back. Pay for convenience. Take unpaid leave to go on a trip with your kids while they still want to be around you.
And if you are in your 20s?
If you're in your 20s with no money but lots of time and health, spend your time. Go hiking, explore your city, build deep relationships. Do not sit in an office for 80 hours a week trying to get rich while letting your health, your youth, and your window for cheap, rugged experiences evaporate.
Okay, we have covered an incredible paradigm-shifting amount of ground today. Let's do a quick recap of this journey. We started by fundamentally redefining money, not as paper, but as your finite life energy. Every dollar you earn is an hour of your life you permanently traded away. We learned that experiences aren't just fleeting moments. They are investments that pay lifelong memory dividends that compound over time.
We saw the brutal, undeniable math of the unspent dime, where hoarding money means working literal years of your life for absolutely nothing. We learned that the golden years of endless spending are a myth, and that trying to self-insure against the extreme alien robot invasion of end-of-life care just leads to wasted youth.
We talked about the very practical tools of using life expectancy calculators and annuities to solve longevity risk, giving you the psychological permission to aggressively enjoy your wealth. We exposed the fallacy of waiting until you die to give money to your kids or to charity, realizing that the peak utility of receiving money is in your late 20s and early 30s. And finally, we looked at the golden triangle, recognizing that we must constantly trade our abundant resources for our scarce ones, and that health, not wealth, is the ultimate multiplier of a life well lived.
The overarching call to action here is to wake up and stop living on autopilot. Our culture constantly, aggressively pushes us to be the ant, to endlessly work, to endlessly save out of a generalized fear of the winter. But I encourage you to take a hard, honest look at your own life. Are you steering deliberately? Ask yourself right now, are you a grasshopper who actually needs to buckle down and save a little for the future? Or are you an ant who desperately, urgently needs to give yourself permission to finally play?
I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over as you go about your day. It builds on everything we've talked about, but shifts the perspective just a bit. We spend our entire adult lives obsessively calculating the financial risk of outliving our money. We consult advisors, we run elaborate spreadsheets, we lay awake worrying late at night about running out of cash at age 90. But what if, instead, we spent just 5 minutes today calculating the existential risk of our money outliving us? Think about the gravity of that. You can always try to pick up an extra shift or sell an asset or earn another dollar tomorrow, but you can never, ever earn back a single yesterday.
That is a profoundly important distinction to make.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Go out there, optimize your life, and build some incredible memories. We'll see you next time.